Recorded. This is your, there we go. So we're recording, and the idea is to make sure that we have this content readily available and accessible to all those that are helping support us navigate the challenging times that we're in. Dan Savage is someone who brought the idea to light, addressing the challenges that student athletes are facing today. So with that, the Wellness Connection decided to put together a coaching and parent summit so we can provide tools and resources to support all those out there in Loudoun County and beyond working on this extremely serious matter. Truthfully, the NCAA.org put out a study in May of this year speaking to the fact that mental health and mental health support is one of the top 3 items on collegiate athletes' needs for the annual year. And that kind of brings us right into the Loudoun County Public Schools and the middle school and high school efforts that are going on today to support these student athletes through the high pressure, high stakes challenges that they face day in and day out. And by way of supporting the parents and the coaches out there, we would like to be seen as a resource for all of the other coaches out there and almost like an extra assistant coach for those helping work on these challenges. So with that, I would like to introduce the team that will be speaking today. We have Susan McCormick, the leader and founder of the Wellness Connection. And through her leadership, we have won Best of Loudoun multiple years running. We have Dan Savage bringing a presentation on the whole athlete, someone who is an athlete himself and is now a professional counselor working at the Wellness Connection, treating the very students that are bringing some of these challenges to light. And then we will be wrapping up with someone who is keen on mental fitness and how the parasympathetic nervous system helps the healing process within those student athletes and anybody willing to listen, and that is Laura Fricks. So with that, I'd like to stop sharing for a moment and turn everything over to our leader and the Wellness Connection founder, Susan McCormick.
Well, hi there, everybody. I'm so excited about kicking this off today for many reasons. All of us at the Wellness Connection, we're deeply devoted to the whole community. And one of the things that we try and do is pay attention to what are the issues and the concerns that people are bringing to us, and how can we take things just a little further to help the community and in ways other than just coming in and doing talk therapy. Because let's face it, there's not a one size fits all for how we treat people. We're mind, we're body, we're soul, there's so much to us in healing. And so we like to kind of approach it from that perspective. You might think I look a little silly. I've got my little Clemson Pride t-shirt on because I am literally leaving from this webinar to go to a Clemson football game after this. And no joke, we don't joke around. We got the flags. I even have a tiger tail that I put on the back of my car. So what I love about sports is that, my husband and I moved to South Carolina to start doing intensive retreats for people experiencing trauma or couples that are in crisis. Because sometimes people want to be able to get to kind of dive in and get better. But we picked Clemson, I live in Seneca, which is about 20 minutes from Clemson, but we picked it because we wanted to be in a sports town. Because I love what sports represents. I mean, think about it. It's where people come together for a collective purpose, and we're all moving in the same direction, screaming and yelling. And you know what? We support each other when we're winning, and we support each other when we're losing. And so, that's just a great metaphor for life, And I think there's such an important place for sports in our society, in our community. But the reality is that some people are struggling, when they take on this courageous role and they are willing to show up in the arena and give their 110%. At Clemson, we have this thing when the athletes come into the field, there's a big rock that sits on top of the hill, and all the football players go and they rub the rock and they run down the hill. And the crowd goes wild. It's the entry into Death Valley, and rubbing that rock means that they're giving 110%. But sometimes our athletes forget that they can't give 110% all the time. And so we want to talk about how to create healthy athletes and how to support them. Personally, I am using very leading edge kind of technology and leading edge modalities to help treat and support athletes here in Clemson. So I'm utilizing things like EMDR, like hypnosis, all these things that kind of have felt a little bit out there, but really the research behind it is unequivocal. Like it is 80 to 90% effective when you look at other modalities that don't offer those high levels. So here at the Wellness Connection, we are devoted to our community. You know, our core values, we have 6 core values at the Wellness Connection. We're passionate about what we do. You're going to see that with all 4 of us. We are innovative in the way that we treat people. You're going to see that we think outside the box here and want to offer solutions for you. We collaborate, not just with each other as clinicians, we collaborate with our community. We want to have like the bat phone kind of response where if you're a teacher and you have a problem, you call us and we answer. You know, that's the hard thing. Most people say when they're calling lots of organizations, they're not able to answer. We want to make sure that we answer those calls and that we're a resource. Dan and Laura want to be a resource to you. If you're a coach and you got a problem or you're like, I don't know what to do with this, like my athlete was doing this, and call us. Let us be a coach to you. Let us give you options and opportunities to support you. But we also support a very positive culture at our environment. In our office, we lead with integrity, and we're always accountable if we've made a mistake. That's our commitment to you. But last and the most important, and that's big on my heart, and I think all of ours, is that we are community minded. If we are not serving the community that we work in my opinion, we don't deserve to be here. So you have our commitment that if there is a need that you have, please contact us. Jonathan, Melanie Davis is our clinical director. I'm the owner. I've never turned down a phone call. So that is our commitment to you. So with that, I want to turn this over to my esteemed colleagues here to share with you a little bit about their thoughts. We're going to open it up to some Q&A at the end, and then look for me because it's Wear Pink today at Clemson. So you might see me in the stands. So I look forward to the rest of this webinar. So Jonathan, you can turn it over to Dan.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan, Jonathan, Laura. It's always tough following Susan after she speaks. She does it so fluidly. It's like, got to follow that up. But Jonathan was being extremely modest. So like this was Jonathan's brainchild for sure. It was like 80% him, 20% me, and we collaborated on how this came about. You know, he was essentially like, hey, Dan, what if we had this, you know, these conferences where people were able to come to, and, you know, you could tell them about what you do and the strategies that you provide for your athletes. Is that something you'd be interested in? Do you even want to talk in front of people? Can you talk in front of people? And I was like, I can try. I've done it before. So this was kind of a collaborative effort. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Michelle as well. She works with us, and she's just, she has been unbelievable in trying to get people together and spread the word of what we're trying to do here today. Which is essentially just try to give people a little bit of insight into, well, what I'm trying to do is just have people have a better understanding of what goes on inside of these walls. What happens in my sessions? What are kids coming to me with? You know, and whether you're a coach or a parent or an athlete yourself and you're watching this, you know, this process can be a little scary sometimes before you enter these doors. I guarantee how you feel when you come will be different than how you feel when you leave these doors, because it's the process that I have of breaking down some of the barriers about mental health counseling, right? Just saying that in general can be kind of frightening. I almost don't, it's crazy. I almost don't see myself as a counselor. I almost just see myself as an athlete that just became someone who helps people. And that's like the labels that we put on ourselves at an early age. I mean, from the age of, since I can remember, since I was 5 until the age of 22, I was an athlete. That was the label. That's what if anybody asks, oh, what do you do? Or who are you? I play sports. I play sports. That was it. For essentially 17 years, 18 years straight, that was my mindset. And when you stop playing your sport, specifically to when other people tell you you have to stop playing your sport, not out of your own volition, there are a lot of challenges. And Jonathan, you can go to the first slide. My journey as an athlete, like I was saying, I finished college and the fingers were crossed that I would get a call from the draft and I would continue to play professionally. And was that realistic? Yes and no, depending on who you ask. Some of my friends, if they ever see this, they're going to be laughing. Some others would be like, no, you had a shot. But when you're told to stop playing your sport, it's a very difficult process because you've defined yourself as this one thing, this one being, this one entity your whole entire life. And then after that, you just are done. And life can become a little, a little concerning and a little questioning. And you're not exactly sure where to go next if you don't have a plan. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But the work that I do with my athletes and just the work I do with my clients just in general is I'm extremely passionate about. And not just because I enjoy helping people and I enjoy listening to people's stories and navigating whatever they have going on in their lives and the goals they have for themselves, but I see myself in all of my kids that walk in through the door, specifically my athletes. And that helps me stay focused. It helps me with burnout. It helps me continue to stay curious and driven for this work because I can empathize so much with so many of the stories that do come in through the doors. There's a funny thing in the mental health field, especially if you work as a therapist. Sometimes you become the person that you needed as a child. And I feel very much that way, that there were many times where I wish there was just an outlet. There was a place that I just knew I could go to talk to somebody. But growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, mental health in sports, we're not reinventing the wheel by talking about mental health in sports. It's a lot more well-known now. We've been lucky to have people like Michael Phelps and Simone Biles and all these people talk about their journey and the struggles that they've had. But there wasn't a lot of that when I was growing up. And it was very taboo to talk about anxiety or your mental health issues. I don't even remember the words mental health being uttered when I was in high school or when I was growing up. It was essentially something that you struggled with and power through, but what we're trying to do is make sure that this community that raised me, I'm from Loudoun County. I was raised here. For those that are in Loudoun County that know old Loudoun County, I went to Lincoln Elementary. So that was like the only school in the area, in like the Percival area. I still live there now. So being able to give back to the community that raised me, like Susan was talking about, is just unbelievably rewarding. And I want schools, specifically high schools, that's really where my passion is, but I don't say no to anybody for the most part. Little issue I have. But people need to know that we are here. People need to know that our services exist. People like me exist. Again, an athlete turned counselor. It's not something that you see too often, but we are here, we exist, we're in Loudoun County. And, I want to make sure that the Wellness Connection, that people know that the Wellness Connection is a place where you can receive those services. And we can be a partner for high schools. We can be a partner for elementary schools, whatever it might be, for colleges, and just a place where people know I can go there. I know that's a place I can go. And this is a confidential space. This is a private space for people to come and just talk about whatever they have going on in their lives, the struggles that they're having. Nobody finds out about these things. If somebody would have told me at a younger age, like, you can go there and no one's going to know, that would have been a lot healthier as well. But yes, so I'm from here. I love this county. I love this part of Virginia. I played baseball my whole entire life. Dabbled in a little bit of golf. Now golf is pretty much the only thing that I do play. After separating and dislocating my shoulder 3 times, tearing multiple things in my right shoulder, the movement is not 100% there. So I am now a golfer, and that is my athletic journey as of now. But played baseball. I went to Paula VI Catholic High School when I was in Fairfax. Now it's out near us here in Loudoun. And then ended up playing baseball at Lynchburg College, where I was a 4-year starter there. For their team, and they have an unbelievable program now, which I'm just so excited for them about. But like I said, and like I started talking about, when you're told to stop playing your sport and you don't have a plan for that, a lot of what I do as well is work with athletes who are experiencing injuries and athletes who might be coming to an end of their journey, who might be in college and are not making the team, or getting out of high school and not getting any offers. And my personal experience with that was very difficult, and it was almost immediate. And there was panic. I can remember when I had my first panic attack, it was about 4 weeks after the baseball season, and I had no idea what was going on or what was happening. And it was my subconscious mind kicking in and telling me you're lost. You no longer have what you were always focused on and how you represented yourself. And through a lot of luck and a lot of hard work, I was able to do what I do now, and feeling extremely lucky that I chose this path. But again, I remember when I was getting out of college and I didn't know what I was going to do next, I got a job as an insurance salesman. And I was like, this is it. I was like, I'm going to be making X amount of money. This is fantastic. And I had a conversation with my dad, and I remember, it honestly changed my life. He said, Dan, you can always do these other things, always, but you might as well focus on what you're passionate now and just see where it takes you. And, that is where I was like, well, I like helping people. Maybe I'll just do that. And then it kind of rolls into everything, that I'm doing now. So that's just a little bit about my background, about me. But Jonathan, let's get into why we're here exactly. So I'm going to breeze over this slide. I don't like to focus too much on statistics. Please read this for yourself. But essentially what you're seeing here is athletes are still not reaching out for help at an extremely alarming rate, more than your regular college student, your regular high school student. So as you see here, 68% of college students are going to experience a significant symptom. A significant symptom is not just feeling worried or feeling a little nervous. It's something that's impacting your ability to perform, impacting your ability to participate in life the way that you want. And 30% of those are going to reach out for help. Only 7% of those that are athletes are reaching out for help. That leaves an extremely, when I saw these numbers, that leaves an extremely wide, vast population of people that are struggling in silence, that don't feel they have a voice. What we are trying to do here is just help people understand that it is okay. It is okay. And there is a place where you can go. And there are people that support the very specific thing that you feel you're struggling with, that you're hiding behind closed doors for whatever reason it might be. And we will figure it out in here. I'm in my office right now. This is where we navigate those things. And when I saw these numbers, I said, we have to continue to normalize this process. And another alarming, when you see 68 is that first number you see, before COVID, that number was 39. So what we're seeing after COVID, we understand the implications that we've experienced, but that was so unhealthy for the mental health of our world for so many different reasons. But specific for our younger population, they went in. We isolated, we stopped talking to each other. Human beings are pack animals. We're social creatures. We're supposed to be around each other. That doesn't mean you need to have a million friends, but you need to have a community. People lost their community. They lost their belonging. They lost their sense of self. And that just breeds mental health concerns. And now you put that on top of an athlete that is trying to navigate just so many more things. It's kids are trying to handle these things on their own. That's essentially what we're seeing at the end of the day. They're trying to just do things on their own. And we're trying to break that barrier. All right, Jonathan. Also, you're going to see at the bottom here, can you go back real quick, Jonathan? My bad. You're going to see at the bottom here, these are quotes. These are actual quotes from my clients that are athletes in Loudoun County, specifically high schoolers, that have said to me in session. So you're seeing very specific things that I am hearing every single day that I do this work. So every time I do work with an athlete and somebody comes in through my doors, I need to make sure it's a subjective experience to what they have going on. I do not have a cookie cutter approach to how I treat an individual, because I feel that if you do, you stop being curious about their story. You stop being curious about where they came from, what they're struggling with now, who their friends are, how their parents raised them. Have they been involved in this type of work before? Like whatever it might be, I make sure that I'm not just treating the diagnosis that I see as it walks in through the door, but I'm treating the person, the personality, and the story that that person brings with them. And that's a very subjective, a very individualized process. But it's funny, as my athletes are talking about their experience on the field and how they're behaving and how they're acting and how they're thinking and all that type of stuff, you know, I asked them a very confrontational question, but a question that raises some eyebrows. I go, you know, after they tell me what they do and what they play, I go, all right, so when did you actually stop playing your sport? And then they usually give me a very weird look and they go, oh no, you know, I told you I'm on varsity. I played 3 years on varsity. I go, oh no, I know, but when did you stop playing? And they go, I am playing. I do play. And I go, nothing about what you just told me had anything to do with actually playing the game. You sound like you feel like you have to put on a show for the people in the crowd. You have to impress your coach. You have to impress the scouts that are there. You have to impress your teammates. You have to do things that are outside of your already natural talents. All of the hard work that you have put in to getting you to where you are, the strengths, the mindset, all of these things, you feel like you have to do more than that. And you feel like you have this pressure, like it says here, to perform, to put on a show. Athletics in sports in specific is a very interesting field. People pay money to come watch you put on a show, but what they're watching is not fake, it's real. So what can happen for our athletes is they get lost in that mindset that these people are coming to watch us perform. They're actually coming to watch you play. And what happens somewhere along the line is that my kids that are coming in through the door, my athletes that I'm working with, have lost this ability to play, and they just feel like they have to perform. I mean, this whole concept of performance anxiety, right? That's a little bit of a buzzword, but performance anxiety, that means that you feel anxious about having to put on a show, having to put on some sort of a performance. I have never heard one of my kids go, yeah, I'm performing in a soccer show tomorrow, or I'm performing in a football show tomorrow. I really need to make sure I put on a good show. Like that just doesn't happen. They always go, oh yeah, I got a game tomorrow. Yeah, I'm playing in a game. So we get back to the roots of where you started. We get back to what your passion was for the sport. And I understand that as you get older, it does get more serious. There's more on the line. College scholarships, you know, even these athletes that are playing a sport that are making millions of dollars, those that are able to tap into this play mindset and get away from this performance mindset is one of the most important things they can do, that we can do. And so what we're trying to do here is you're reclaiming your ability to play, to be a player and not a performer. Because what we know about the brain is the brain seeks patterns. It wants to do the same thing over and over and over again. And if you step on that field, it's a visceral experience. You just might start to tap into, oh, I got to put on a show. So we are breaking down that mindset a little bit and getting back to the play that so many of these kids have lost. We're going to move into, go ahead, Jonathan. We're going to move into some core beliefs here. This is something I really, really love. And that if it's applicable to the person I'm working with, I make sure that I do, is exploring how somebody thinks about who they are. So as you see here, core beliefs are deeply held assumptions and ideas about themselves, others, or the world. Somewhere along the way, if they do have some core beliefs, and maybe it's some of the things that you see here at the bottom, I'm not as good as everyone else on the team. I'm afraid that I'm going to mess up like I always do. I'm going to lose this game. I shouldn't be the one to you know, have the ball hit to them at the end of the game or catch the game-winning pass. I'm just not a very confident person. That's a big one, right? I'm not a very confident person. Well, that's a thought. That's something that you think in your head. And somewhere along the way, you started believing it. You started actually believing that you're not a confident person, but that you weren't born that way. That just happens as you grow up, whatever it might be. And again, it could be for a million different reasons, whether it's something with your friends, something with your teacher, something with whoever it is. Somewhere along the way, you started thinking that you were not a very confident person, and then you started believing that you were that you were not a confident person. And that's because of the amount of times that you started thinking it over and over and over again. And like I was just talking about, the brain wants to do the same thing over and over and over again. So the more that we think that, the more we believe it, and then it just becomes how we act. It becomes part of our personality. So if we're not a very confident person, then we should never be the person who has the game on the line and the ball's hit to us. We should never be the person, during a basketball game that needs to hit the game-winning shot because I'm not confident. Well, that's just something you think. That's not something that's true. So what we do is we challenge these core beliefs. We challenge how you actually think about who you are and how you are as an individual. And that starts with the relationship that I create with all of my kids, because some of them come in here with a mask. They come in here with, I'm this and I'm tough and I got this and I got, and then by session 3 or 4, whatever it might be, you see these walls breaking down and you see them starting to kind of explore where these things came from. How did I start thinking this way? And do I want to continue thinking this way? Because you can change your thoughts, but you have to understand that the reason you think that way is because you actually believe it. But it didn't come from anywhere. It came from somewhere on the outside where you started believing it on the inside. So part of what we do here is, again, making sure that the relationship, and this is where I use something called person-centered therapy. So it's the way that I describe that to people is I'm trying to get to know my kids better than they know themselves so that I can pull stuff out of them, so that I can help them have perspective and perceive things in different ways and say, you're saying this, but what I'm actually hearing is this. That's a big thing in counseling. And that doesn't happen unless I know them extremely well. That doesn't happen unless we have this relationship of honesty, because again, they might come in with even, it's one of those things where it's like, if I say it out loud, maybe it'll become true. And that can be very scary. And that's what prevents people from coming to counseling in the first place, that you're scared to say things, because now that you say them out loud, you have to start doing some work about them. People try to ignore things their whole lives. You can go 20, 30, 40, 50 years just trying to pretend things aren't there, because life might be easier if you do that. And in here, we're breaking down some of those things, some of those thoughts, that life would just be easier if I ignore it, but it's there and it sits in you. And Laura can definitely talk a lot more specifically to those type of things. When we ignore our thoughts and our feelings, what happens on the inside. I can't get all sciencey on you, but that is something that we do. And we utilize CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to do that. Jonathan, we can roll to the next one. I'll get into that in a second. So this is a very specific, and if you're a coach, if you're a parent, if you're an athlete, whoever watching this is something that you can utilize yourself. This is a specific set of questions that I tinkered with kind of over the years here, that I ask all of my athletes. It's not just for athletes, it's for clients as well, who have a self-belief that they are a certain way. But again, those are thoughts and we have to challenge those thoughts. And one of the big ones here is the second one that you see. Who taught me to feel this way? Who taught me to think this way? And it's really interesting, because when you see someone start to challenge the way that they think they are, you start to see them being open to being different. And that's kind of, and what I talk to my kids about is, like, if you want to see change, you either have to add something, you have to take something away. And that takes work. And what's cool about working with athletes is they know the hard work that you need to put in order to put on muscle, or enhance your cardiovascular system, or the repetition that it takes to be successful on the field. Like, they can put in all of the physical work because it's tangible, because it's right there and you can see the results. When you're putting in the physical work to become successful, reach a goal, whatever it might be, maybe it's hit something on the bench press, maybe it's run a certain amount in a certain amount of time, whatever it might be, that is work you can see. What becomes very frustrating for my kids is that the mental health challenges that they're experiencing and the work they're going to be putting in is in here. You'll see it on the field, but it's in here. It's the work inside that we're doing. And that becomes very challenging because it is work. So we're changing the way that you're looking at working on your mental health, because you are going to have to set aside time. You are going to have to think about it when you don't want to. The same way you wake up at 5 a.m. and you run 6 miles. Do you want to do that? Well, I know I don't. But do I do it? Yes. Do I enjoy it? Not every time. And it's seldom, actually. Like 10% of the time do I actually enjoy a run. But I do it because I know that it's good for me and the benefits that I'm going to receive afterwards. So that is kind of how we start framing it in here too. You have this athlete's mindset of hard work pays off. That's a big thing, right? Well, this is work. You come in here and we work. We're going to connect and we're going to laugh and sometimes cry and we're going to celebrate and all those amazing things. But this is true work, and things don't change unless you put in that work. But for an athlete, they get that. And I got kids right now that have bought into that, and they come in here like, tell me, what do I do now? What do I do now? So we have to be very careful, because that puts you in a big position of kind of power, I guess you could say. But we are not here just to offer suggestions of how you should go do things. Again, I'm getting to know my kids for who they are and what works best for them, but that just means when my kids walk in through the door and they start to see differences in their performance because they're doing this internal work, it's like everyone's bought in, and it's stuff like this, challenging it, thinking about things differently, asking the questions that they've never been asked before. The amount of times that they say, no one's ever asked me that. I'm like, good, because we're going to start asking it now. Okay, Jonathan. So this is kind of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is one of the big modalities that's utilized in therapy in order to try to change somebody's thoughts, feelings, behaviors in order to live a healthier, happier lifestyle. But how I utilize this is, you really can't change how you feel, at least not in the moment, right? So when we started this talk, I knew that like my heart rate was a little bit elevated. I was feeling a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous about how I was going to do. I want this to go well, all of these type of things. There was nothing I could do in the moment to change that. Settle your nerves, settle your heart. I could start doing my breathing techniques in front of everyone, but that would have looked pretty odd. So what we do here with CBT is we look at this kind of wheel here. We look at our thoughts and we look at our behaviors. And then again, kind of to sum up what we were just talking about, if you want to change how you feel, sometimes you need to start changing how you think and how you act. So it's sometimes doing the work that we don't want to do, but we know is going to benefit us and we know is going to be really, really healthy for us, and challenging our thoughts and sometimes behaving differently. And what I like to say, change is a dimmer switch. It's not a light switch. And if it is a light switch, then it's usually unhealthy. And if it is a light switch, someone can just flip it right back off. We want change to be incremental and small and almost unnoticeable. But when you get to whatever goal you're trying to reach, you go, wow, my goodness, how different do I feel? And it's because of the thoughts that you've been trying to change. It's because of the actions that you've been trying to change. It's because of the work that you're putting in. And go ahead, Jonathan. And a big part of that is acceptance and committal therapy. So this is a type of therapy, and I kind of want you to look at this last little bullet point: increased psychological flexibility. The goal is to enhance an individual's ability to adapt to situations and feelings, rather be limited by them. You can't change how you feel, so we might as well buddy up to them. We might as well become more accepting of them, more aware of them, more curious about them, more challenging to them. We have to just take these things in, because what starts to happen when you're feeling this nervousness, anxiety, worry, pressure, stress, all of these things that people don't want to feel, athletes don't want to feel, you become overwhelmed by them and you don't know what to do. So we accept the things, right? The classic saying, accept the things you can't change and commit to the things that you want to see. And that is what acceptance and committal therapy is all about. It's about buddying up to your feelings, allowing them to come in, right? Because once you own them, they become less scary. I was working with a kid the other day, struggling so much with his confidence, and it was because of this deep fear that he had, this feeling of fear inside of him. And his coach, he utilized a very bold strategy, essentially to call him out in front of the whole entire team. And what happened was the fear started to dissipate, because it was no longer behind closed doors and it was open. And that acceptance and committal therapy is all about you accepting it yourself, and sometimes wearing it almost as a badge of honor. This is how I am and this is who I am, and that's okay. And we start to talk about these feelings that you're so committed to trying to get rid of them and erase and help, make sure they go away. But in this specific circumstance, we're actually doing the exact opposite thing. We're accepting them, because the more that you can understand them and the more you take them in, usually the less scary they are and the less overwhelming they can feel. All right. And I want to make sure that I give Laura enough time here. So I might run quickly through these. This is called a mental health action plan. If you're a parent, if you're a whoever you might be, if you think that you can take something from this, essentially, anxiety, big word, means 1,000 things. Everybody defines it in their own way. Anxiety loves unpredictability. It loves when you don't know what to do. It loves when something happens and you don't have a plan. It breeds off of that. But the more you have the ability to respond according to a plan that you have, anxiety starts to dissipate itself, because okay, if this happens, then I can do this. And that's some of the main things that we do here in my office as well, is create strategies, exercises, and skills so that you feel that you can respond properly to the anxiousness that you might be feeling, to the worry that you might be feeling. But it doesn't come without a plan. So it's very strategic in what we do and how we set up a plan for all the athletes. And it's asking these specific questions, asking the hard questions. Again, you have to be willing to put in the work. What are my triggers? What are my warning signs? What if I am experiencing a panic attack? What do I do? Because right now, sometimes people don't know what to do. When I had my first one, I didn't know what to do. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was dying. And that's a big thing for anyone watching who's had a panic attack, and your first one is, whoa, fish out of water, life-threatening experience, and it was in my journey where I was able to learn coping skills, learn the skills that I needed in order just to feel more confident. And then, I have a daughter now too, so she takes up all my time. But these are specific questions that we do ask, and that I help parents ask their children as well, to make sure that we have a plan to respond to their mental health concerns. I'm not going to talk too much about this so that I have time. Essentially, flow. It's something that there's a book called Flow that's very, very cool, Flow in Sports. And it's essentially this, it's a state of being, I guess I would say, where you feel in complete control, complete calmness, and you feel that you are playing 100% at your best at all times. And it's not done in the moment. You can't think your way into flow. You can't have a light switch and say, I'm going to do a flow now, and then turn it off. It's something that just happens from a variety of different factors. Again, a big part of it is putting in the work and getting a plan together beforehand, so that your sport just flows, and you being an athlete is just automatic. You don't have to think about being an athlete and playing in the game. You can just play. You just let everything else go, and you're not concerned about your coach or the scout in the crowd, or your parents in the crowd, or your friends that came and watched you. You're simply in the moment. I had very rarely in my career, I wish this was talked about more when I was younger, because very rarely in my career was I in the flow. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. I'm saying this to almost say how insane it was. I hit 2 home runs my whole entire college career. 2. They were in the same game and back-to-back at-bats. Something happened that game. I went 5 for 5, just 7 RBIs. It was a ridiculous game. It's the first time really I ever experienced true flow. And it was not something I knew was coming. I didn't even know what it was when I had it. I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm in the flow right now. And that's also not something. It's just this mindset that you have, that you tap into. The thinking part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, shuts off, and you simply are just in a state of being. It's almost meditative. But there's so many things that we can do beforehand. Essentially, the further you try to get from being in the flow, the closer you are. And it's a very cool thing once you experience it. And I'll kind of wrap up with something that you can ask yourself. If you're an athlete, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? But making sure that our goals are flexible. The ones that we set up in here, we have goals. That's a part of the therapeutic process that you set up with all of your kids and all of your clients. What are we actually working towards in here? What does this process look like for you? And how can we help you accomplish those goals? But they are flexible. We don't continue, because life changes, so your goals should change. We don't say, hey, this is what we set up, we have to continue to work towards that. It changes. It changes with the times and what you have going on in your life. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura. She's really going to get into kind of some more of the maybe specifics about what I talked about, talk about herself and her journey a little bit. and really the athlete's mindset for sure a little bit more. But I'll let you take it from there, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, I'm Laura, and like Dan, I was a college athlete as well. But before I jump into my background, I just want to talk to you about a phrase I like to use, mental fitness, kind of to get away from the stigma that a lot of people have about mental health. And it's really just about developing the tools that give your brain the ability to respond appropriately to various situations. So Dan has spoken a little bit to that already. Go ahead, Jonathan. So this is just an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. I was a college athlete. I ran track and cross country for Bucknell University. And unlike Dan, I was lucky because when I went to work after college, I got to run on the GE corporate national team. And then when I turned 40, after a decade of raising, having my kids, I got sponsored by Pacers, and I'm still running today. So I didn't start running till my senior year in high school. So I'm dating myself here, but it was the first year our high school even had a cross country team. So, yeah, but I have a unique perspective in that I am a parent of athletes. My children are grown now, but I just want to share the diverse. Go ahead, Jonathan. So these are my kids. I had 2 boys and 2 girls. They're adults now. They dabbled in a lot of sports, but these are the sports that they ended up focusing on. And so I know there's people here with a lot of different sports that they're interested in. So I bring the unique perspective of being a mother of athletes. And I know there's moms out there, not just coaches. So I wanted to share some of the tools I learned that I was just going to use for myself that turned out to be too good not to share with the world. So that's some of those tools I'm going to be sharing with you today. So basically, Sarah had the option of becoming, she was recruited to become a professional athlete and she turned it down. She's also one of my children, the only child. She went to Virginia Tech, and they provide really excellent mental health counseling there. And it was so impactful for her that she's now training to do what Dan does. She's in grad school out in Colorado. So hers wasn't specifically related to her performance, but some challenges with some of the guys on the men's team. And so there's lots of factors that influence your enjoyment or participation in a sport. My daughter Katie also experienced a panic attack. It was only a single occurrence, but what I want you to understand as a parent, that in that moment, that's the best that the child has. If they had anything better, they wouldn't be in a puddle on the floor. I mean, so you just have to always recognize that everyone is doing the best with what they have. So as a mom, I was concerned about, are my kids thriving? What can I do to help them deal with all the pressure that they're under? And what can I do to minimize injury? So those are the primary concerns I'm going to be addressing today. And our stories may not be the same, but hopefully you can relate. So go ahead. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of cultivating resilience is to stay in your lane. Let your child take the lead when deciding to participate in a sport, and understand their why, because sometimes, they want to be serious, like, they want to be a baseball player like their whole life, like Dan, but other times they might just want to do things for social reasons, because high school sports are a very fun community to participate in. And if they do choose to do it, just make sure they understand you're both on the same page as to what you're committing to. The performance results belong to the athlete. This is a time when parents can think they're being really supportive, and sometimes they're actually adding pressure. So that depends on the perception of the athlete, whether it's supportive or feels like pressure. You also want to avoid living vicariously through your child. So I was lucky in that regard, because since I had my own, sports experience. I didn't need to live through my child. It's important also to know your why, and also understand those transitions, because one of my friends, her daughter played lacrosse for UVA, but decided to stop at the end of her junior year. And so the mom had already identified with being a lacrosse mom, so she had to go through her process of letting that go. And let the coach do the coaching, and you can be the cheerleader as the parent. So next slide. So another way to cultivate resilience is really to model a growth mindset. I actually grew up with a fixed mindset. And in fact, the author of this book grew up with a fixed mindset. And she was blown away when she was doing the research, because when you have a fixed mindset, you're very risk averse, which is not very great aspect of character when you're in a sport. But you also view failure as a failure instead of viewing it as a learning opportunity. And the growth mindset really embraces new challenges and really can see all failures as a lesson and a learning opportunity. And all learning is growth. So it's a really great thing to cultivate. So in terms of support, there's two core needs that people have when it comes to reassurance, and that's that they're enough and they're not alone. And there's a really common mistake that most people make when they're trying to reassure. So if in the moment the child is like, I lost the game, I missed the winning shot, I lost the game for the team, it's not gonna work for them if you say, if they're feeling like they let the team down, and you say, oh, but you had a great game, it's just that one shot. That's denying their reality in the moment. And so you really have to be able to help them deal with the disappointment and not trying to deny the reality. They also need to feel that they're not alone. So it just really depends on the circumstance. So Sarah had a bad race one day. I mean, obviously, like Dan said, you can't have your best race of your life every single race. And so it would not have worked for me to say, oh, but you're a really good runner. But the whole team didn't run well that day. So it was a coaching issue, not an issue, but the coach wasn't focused on performance for that week. So that by helping her see that it was the whole team, she was part of a team that didn't run well that day, then she was okay with it. So when it comes to dealing with disappointment, a lot of times we want to try to make our kids feel better. And like Dan was saying, you really need to sit with the emotions, because emotions, they're real and they just want to be felt, and denying them just pushes them into the body, which we don't want them stored in the body. So you really just want to be able to sit on the bench of disappointment with them and allow them to feel their feelings, and just be with them in their sadness or disappointment. And then I had really good success in our family in terms of navigating change. And this ties into what Dan was talking about with identities. So there's a good book called The Master of Change by Brad Stulberg. And the more labels you can identify with, then the less challenges you have when a transition needs to be made. So like Andrew was focused on soccer, but he was also a really good chess player, and he was also into theater, and then he did improv theater when he got into high school. Sarah was a rock climber. We're really into board games. So she likes to walk dogs. So you have all these labels. I'm a dog walker, I'm a dog daughter, I'm a really good friend. And so the more that you can identify, the broader identities that you can identify with, then if you have to lose one, due to injury or retirement, even in a career, the easier that change is going to be. So just something to contemplate. Maybe make a list of all the things that you're good at, or that you feel like that you enjoy, and that can help navigate change. So I'm not going to go deep on the nervous system right now because we don't have time, but some stress is actually good, because the fight or flight is the sympathetic state where we send the blood and oxygen to our limbs and prepare to run from the tiger. So you need a certain amount of adrenaline, to kind of get pumped up for a game. But when you go into a dysfunctional state of the nervous system, that's when you can have some challenges, and it will definitely pull you out of the flow state that Dan was talking about. So I have some tools that I want to share. Well, first, I want you to understand the source of the stress, because the nervous system is the first thing they teach in medical school, but they kind of skip the chapter 0 and about what controls the nervous system. And it's our thoughts and beliefs that control how the nervous system responds in any given situation. And many of those beliefs were formed when you're young and exist in the subconscious mind. And so one of the things that I can partner with Dan on is when you don't really know what the belief is. Like my daughter Katie, when she would ask for sessions with me, she would just say, I'm not feeling like my best self. So she didn't really have a specific belief. She just knew she was off. And so if there's challenges getting to the underlying story, my work can be really helpful for that. And I do want to share some tools for coping with stress on the next slide. And the brain balance is something I teach in my self-care workshop. I'll be talking more about that. It creates instant calm. And the physiological side, you can look up Andrew Huberman on YouTube. This is useful because as opposed to regular breath work, it actually brings relief in the moment. It's especially good for relieving anxiety. And it's just a double in-breath followed by an exhale. I know several grounding practices, and that really just draws the energy out of your head, because the head is where all those thoughts are swirling around. And that's what we really, that will keep us out of the flow state for sure. So if you can get grounded, it doesn't necessarily mean you're calm. It could be you're in the flow state. So that's really good in terms of getting, enjoying your game and just, having a good outcome. Fear and excitement are the same physiologically in the body. So some work can be done around, Dan was talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. And so we can actually reframe fear as excitement. And that was introduced in the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. And another thing that you might not be familiar with is completing the stress cycle. So sometimes the stressor has been removed, but your body is still in stress mode. And just like an antelope, when it escapes from a lion, it'll shake. And that is to complete the stress cycle. So we can do that as humans as well. And it's very powerful to really close that loop and be moved back into a stable nervous system state. So what I really want to focus on is injury prevention, because I teach a self-care workshop that includes the brain balance, but also includes energetic first aid. And so I want to bust the myth that ice and NSAIDs like ibuprofen promote healing, because they do not. There's some links. It's basically interfering with the body's natural ability to heal. And my work actually leverages the body's natural ability to heal. So basically, whenever you get injured, your body goes into fight or fight mode. And in that mode, it's not allocating any resources towards healing. And so energetic first aid brings the body out of fight or flight mode and gets the body to start initiating the healing process from the inside out. And I used it. If my son got injured on a soccer field, he would look up in the stands and kind of nod his head for me to do some work. My daughter came home from a pole vault. She was using a drill bar, and the bar hit her head, and she came home with a giant goose egg. And I did the KISS routine for emergencies, and 30 minutes later, the bump was completely gone. And she was thrilled because she was going to running camp the next morning, and I was thrilled because it was such a dramatic result. But this is such a great tool that I really think coaches, trainers, moms should all have this. And I like to highlight that none of my kids, despite doing high risk sports, sustained any long-term injuries. They're all healthy, happy young adults right now. So I think that's about it. Oh, well, okay, sorry. I do want to, I know getting close on time. Chinese medicine offers a really interesting perspective that's really helpful in understanding things. So whenever, um, whenever we're trying to make a decision, the gallbladder meridian runs through the outside of the ankle. So our ankles are very vulnerable. And so that the lens of Chinese medicine just helps you understand what's going on. There was a dad who has a 13-year-old son who's like good enough to potentially play in the NBA. And he recently broke his ankle. And I asked him, as a friend of my husband's, and I said, what's going on? And so this kid is only 13. I don't think he's decided he wants to go to the NBA yet. But the dad is putting all the resources and money into it. But if he understood, like, wow, my son just broke his ankle, that's a lot of pressure that I'm putting. Like it would help him see it in a way that maybe he's not able to see. So anyway, we're short on time. Thank you for listening. And I'm going to turn it back over to Susan for the wrap up.
Susan, I think you're muted.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Dan. I was trying to be respectful. My dog's little paws were like clicking behind me early on in this. So I apologize if that caused some issues, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're happy to hang out. For those of you that might have Q&A, if any of you would like us to hang out, you are welcome in your chat button to maybe throw a few questions our way. We'd love to make this more interactive, but if you have to leave because you allotted 1 hour, we want to make sure we respect that time for you. So feel free to drop off if you need to, but one, great job, team. I'm proud of you guys. You did awesome. For the rest of you that were here watching, we want to be your support. You can see the passion that Dan has. I mean, I wish I had a Dan for Finn McCarty when he was younger, and a Laura to give me alternative ways to kind of support our kids. But these are really great resources. 2 athletes that have walked the walk, that have been parents to children that are athletes, and they bring a wealth of information. And so please utilize us in any way that's helpful. We're not going to get upset if you call us and you're just asking us for advice. We actually prefer that. We want to be a resource. We don't want to just be people that you have to go through this arduous process to get scheduled. We want to try and streamline and make that easy for you. But we are deeply devoted to this notion of athletes and how we can better support them and help them grow into the humans that we all want as parents, how we can develop these folks to take these wonderful skills they learn through athletics and apply them into whatever makes them happy and fulfilled in life. So we're here to support you in that. Are there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat room, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it there and we will give a few minutes.
And Susan, I just want to let everyone know, like, today was definitely kind of like hey, we provide this service, for athletes in Loudoun County, but be on lookout for these type of sessions again. As we move forward, I want to be a lot more specific when it comes to the topics that we're discussing, to things and challenges that I'm seeing in my office, whether it is performance anxiety or low self-confidence, or struggling with, feeling accepted onto a team, whatever it might be. These topics are very important, and there's a lot of different things that we can do to target specific challenges that our athletes are having. So definitely be on lookout for more of these, because we're going to have a lot more of these virtual kind of sessions for Loudoun County, or just for anyone who feel like they might need it.
Yeah, and we'll be posting all of those topics at our website. We'll be posting them on our social outlets, and Michelle will make sure through our newsletters that we're getting that out to you. And for those of you that were able to come, we would love a review. Michelle's going to send out notes to everyone that came, kind of highlighting what are the top things to take away from this, because we are going to be sharing this recording with all school coaches, with all school counselors, we're going to put it on our social. So even if you had a friend that you think could have benefited from this, we'll have lots of opportunities for people to watch this recording. So we appreciate that. And just to leave you with something funny, I was wondering who John McLovin was, and now I know who he is. He's my husband, who I'm guessing joined because his question was Go Tigers. So With that, I think he's trying to give me a message that it's time to go to the tailgate. I don't see any questions. Let me just double check one more time. So thank you guys so much. We look forward to doing this again. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Well, if I could figure out how to do, oh, here it is.
Oh, wait, there's 2 questions.
Oh, there are. Oh, there's
Oh,
another.
it's just John and Michelle. I just
Yeah.
also want to piggyback on what Dan said, that in terms of special topics, I would also like to invite you to request if there's a particular topic that you're really interested in. My guess is that we could definitely answer address those topics as well.
Awesome. Okay. I will stop recording.